From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. On Martin Luther King Day, the Martin Luther King family telling America, you know what? Don't even bother. Don't celebrate today unless you can get something done on voting rights. And at the time of this recording, nothing has been done. And nothing looks like it can be done. So, at some point here in the very near future, we're just going to have a permanent minority rule Republican Party. And I would say they would, one of their first moves would be to retract Martin Luther King Day as a national holiday. They would just axe it. But, they don't have to because they've reinvented Martin Luther King in their minds. They've done such a sort of brilliant Orwellian job on what people think Martin Luther King was, at least right-wingers, conservatives. They can get all dewy-eyed and love Martin Luther King for his so-called colorblindness. They use King in their arguments all the time. Well, more on that in a little bit. First, it's Monday, so I have to report my weekend to you. I had another call with my sister. By the way, I did warn her about the message request I got in her name. And we determined that, yes, absolutely, that was somebody phishing, that she did not message me on that day or with that message. So if you were listening the other day, we talked about that. And at the time, I'd forgotten to call her and warn her. So anyway, that's good. But we had a little bit of a laugh. I don't know, a sad laugh. You know those sad laughs? We've decided, because when I called and she saw that it was me calling, right away she was worried. Like, oh God, what's wrong? He's got COVID. Something's terrible. Something's happened. Now, normally I might say, well, that's no attitude to have. That's pretty negative thinking. But these days, we all think this way. Who could blame us? So we've decided now that you have to open every conversation with, okay, first of all, I'm fine. You know how you do that when you have bad news to report? Like, I had a car accident, I broke my arm, I got to call my loved ones and tell them. But you don't lead with, okay, I was in a car accident. No, you lead with, first of all, I'm fine. I do have a broken arm. That's the worst of it. Yes, it was a car accident. You start with the good news and then you kind of hide your lead in order to just not panic people. Well, I think we're in a permanent state of that now. My sister and I decided that every time we call, we're going to start with, I'm fine. Everything's good. Yeah, that's, I don't think that's too bad of an idea, actually, make that a permanent practice. Oh, what else did I do over the weekend? Hey, I discovered something you got to check out. Oh my gosh. If you are a fan of Jeopardy at all, and apparently ratings for Jeopardy are skyrocketing at the moment because Amy, I forgot her last name. Is it Schneider? Amy. I don't know. Amy. She's the current champ. She's won like 30 plus games in a row. She's got well over $1 million. She's one of the super champions. So everybody's tuning in to see if she's ever going to get beat. And anyway, I love Jeopardy. Have for a long time. You know that. But I wasn't aware of this. I read a little article. Jeopardy's getting a little more press these days too. That mentioned a website called jarchive.com. It's j-archive.com. And you may not believe this because I didn't believe it when I first read it. They have every game. I mean, every question and answer to every game going back to 1984. It's nuts. It's so great. So I'm looking right now at show number 2739, Thursday, June 27th, 1996. And I'm looking at the board right in front of me. I got the whole board there, the categories, each question, the $100 question, $200 question, et cetera, et cetera. and you hover over the top of the square, and it gives you the answer or the question. You know how it works. So it's the clue and the question. I mean, it's not answer. That, you know, Jeopardy fans, you're not confused by this. Others might be. They're not called questions and answers. You're giving the question based on the clue. It really is question and answer. It's just a gimmick that never went away. So, for example, a lighthouse on Howland Island, category lighthouses. A lighthouse on Howland Island in the Pacific Ocean is named for this aviatrix. I guess that's a female version of aviator. I never saw aviatrix. So the answer, of course, Amelia Earhart. And it even tells me that Kit, the player Kit, got the answer correct. Every game, every question since 1984. Let's do another one. Types of government, the $300 question. The word democracy means these rule. And, of course, the people rule. Kit got that one also. Let's go to the $500 question on, let's see, famous Americans for $500. In 1857, this first U.S. woman doctor and her sister opened the New York Infirmary for Women and Children. Answer, Elizabeth Blackwell. Kit got that one also. That's a coincidence that I got 3 Kit questions, because her score at the first commercial break was only 500. Yes, it gives me that information too. Don, Brian, and Kit. Their scores at the first commercial break, their scores at the end of Jeopardy, and of course their scores at the end of Double Jeopardy, and then their scores at the very end. I could spend hours and hours. This is better than any home version of the game. I mean, you can play real games anytime you want. Every question, every board, every category, every answer. Wow. Okay, so let me stop before I completely nerd out on this. Here's something else I did over the weekend. I listened to my favorite podcast. Remember the other day I recommended The Subtle Forces by my friend Anja Not Anja, an artist friend of mine here in Milwaukee, multidisciplinary artist. She's a writer and a poet and visual artist and performer. She's just a lot of fun. Anyway, her most recent episode was about freedom. Freedom. And it got me thinking about, you know how your brain will do these kinds of things. Got me thinking about Mortimer J. Adler, the philosopher. He came to my attention, as he did to many people in America, through a television series by Bill Moyers. Bill Moyers went to the Aspen Institute, covered one of Adler's seminars, where they were discussing the 6 great ideas, freedom being one of those 6 great ideas, or liberty. Freedom, liberty, same thing. If you're curious, the 6 great ideas are, according to Adler, truth, goodness, and beauty. Those are the ideas we judge by. And then liberty, equality, and justice, the ideas we act on. So, as one thing will trigger another and then trigger another, listening to Anja's podcast about freedom got me thinking about liberty and what is freedom, how to define it. Well, it can only be defined in its relationship with equality. And I'm going to have to do some sort of graphic or painting or something, because the way I see it, liberty is the yin to the yang of equality. They only exist in opposition to each other. And then the line that separates them is the 3rd great idea by which we act, and that is justice. So I like that little visual. Justice tempers liberty and equality. It brings them together, and it divides them as 2 concepts that literally don't exist without the other. Like day and night, cold and hot, whatever oppositions you can think of, they literally don't exist without the other. They only exist in opposition to the other. And then justice is that sort of magical point of connection that brings them into the whole. I love that idea. I love that notion. I think that's a nice way to express liberty, equality, and justice. I've been sort of railing for years about the people who just cry freedom over and over again. Of course, we're going through that right now with the pandemic, but we've seen so many cases of this over the years as the right wing has gone a little nuts, and they're all about freedom, as though equality doesn't exist or justice doesn't exist. It's just all about, they try to define America, and they try to justify all of their policies and all of their ideas and philosophies. They try to justify it all with one word: freedom. Yeah, freedom is a great thing. It's not an all-encompassing concept, though. It only makes sense in the context of its relationship with equality and justice. Now, I suppose you could go off the other cliff if you want to just completely screw liberty or freedom, and you put all of your eggs in the equality basket. I mean, I suppose that could be a problem. I don't really see anybody doing that. I mean, that would be your standard, everybody's equal, everybody wear the same brown Mao suit, right? No, I don't know of anybody who's doing that. Of course, that's the picture that the right wing paints of the left. They accuse us of tossing liberty in the trash and wanting only equality. Well, they can accuse all they want. They can create that straw man, and it may work for them. They may convince some people, but it doesn't make it true. I don't know anybody who wants that. I don't even want that. I'm the leftiest person I know. I like liberty. I love liberty. And I love equality. Well, okay, there it is. Thank you, Anja, for taking me down that little thought road. Yeah, that was the 6 Great Ideas with Mortimer Adler. Really turned me on. 1981, I was a young man, and I was just enthralled with the series, Bill Moyers. 6-part series, probably, I'm guessing. I don't remember exactly. Probably one for each great idea. Anyway, and then, of course, there was a book that I devoured and loved, and it really kind of set me on a path. Now, Mortimer Adler, nobody's perfect. He got lots of criticism even at the time, even within the series, and certainly since then, of being a little Eurocentric and dead white male centric. Okay, yeah, there's absolutely that. And that was valid criticism. And he wasn't apologetic at all. He was a little defensive about that. But he did remind us, he said, okay, this is a study of Western civilization. I never claimed to be examining anything else. This is one project. This is one book. This is one set of ideas. There's nothing universal about it. This is specifically the history of Western civilization and the history of these ideas and what we think about them now. So I thought he made a pretty decent argument, although I won't discount the criticism. In the current conversation of these ideas and anything going forward, you certainly have to at some point say, okay, we know where we came from. We know these ideas arose from somewhere and some particular people in some particular regions. We got to be careful not to let any forward discussion remain limited by that history. So that was a good criticism and very worthy, I thought. So that's the way I thought about it going forward. But it's really worth it. Truth, goodness, and beauty, the ideas we judge by, and liberty, equality, and justice, the ideas we act on. Yeah, I recommend going back, checking out the series with Bill Moyers, checking out the book with that in mind. 6 Great Ideas. I had a good weekend. I also, I do everything on a whim. I swear to God. I don't know what prompted me. Oh, no, now that I think about it, I do. Because, let me stop with the too much premise. I hate when people do that. I really do. Let me say, first of all, Firesign Theater. That's where we're going with this. I love Firesign Theater. If you're not familiar, the comedy troupe from the late 60s, early 70s, and continuing on till, I don't know, are they still together? I don't know current history, if they're all still with us or if they're still active. There was an album just like a year ago. So anyway, Firesign Theater, comedy troupe, and mostly audio-based, which is why I love them. They recorded albums. And now that I'm talking and thinking out loud, I remember why I was thinking about them, because we are bringing back Charles Purcell Presents. Friday, February, let me make sure I got this date right. I'm looking at my calendar because last time, the last episode, when we talked about this, I misspoke on the date and I had to actually go back and edit it out. So you never got a date. Okay, Friday, February 4th. I'm looking at my calendar. I know I'm right. I said Friday the 3rd, which was wrong. So, Charles Purcell Presents is radio theater and kind of odd little pieces and audio collage, and it's a little absurdist, and sometimes it's funny. As we said the other day, it's comedy adjacent. I don't claim to be a great comedian, but it's fun stuff. And it's largely inspired by Firesign Theatre, which I loved as a kid. And I went back and I listened to one of their albums. They're available on YouTube. YouTube is a wonderful thing. You can find anything you want. And I realized that on a second listen that they are I'm not going to try to imitate them. I'm not going to try to compare myself to them. They were so off the wall and so absurdist. I'm also absurdist adjacent. I never take it to the level they do. They're wonderful. If you're not familiar, there again, I feel like as an older guy, I can provide a great service to younger people. I'm always very happy to hear your recommendations. Please do recommend anything you like. Whenever I get a recommendation from a younger person, especially a younger person who knows me, they have an idea of who I am, what I might like. I love to hear their recommendations. My son gives me great recommendations for films and comedy, So I like the two-way street of recommending good art. And I'm recommending Firesign Theatre if you're not familiar. Or maybe you were, it's been a long time. You'll enjoy it. Speaking of art and speaking of my weekend, here's another recommendation for you. Also on YouTube, free, at least it is for now, until somebody discovers what have we done? How is this free? Death of a Salesman. Of course, the great Arthur Miller Broadway play. Classic, right? One of the great American plays. Well, there's a version. There's a made-for-television movie version from 1966 starring Lee J. Cobb, who originated the role of Willy Loman on Broadway. And also the actress who plays his wife, Mildred Dunnock, is also reprising her role. She was the Broadway original. But it's such a great production. It's sort of a hybrid. So it's on a stage. It looks like Broadway, but there's no live audience. And it's they take some liberties that they couldn't take in front of a live audience. But it's not a movie. It's not out on location or on movie sets. No, it's on this one really nicely designed stage set. Great performances. George Segal plays Biff Loman. Gene Wilder shows up in a smaller role. Bernard, I think, is the character's name. But this is just something we don't see. You and I have talked a couple times about the live musicals that they've been doing the last few years, the networks have been doing. And I'm mostly very supportive of that. I think it's pretty good. But way back in the day, in the early years of television, they would do live presentations of plays. So it wasn't an audience, but it was basically a television set, like a stage set. And it would be presented live. But this was sort of in that style, in this 1966 version of Death of a Salesman. And man, it was great. What a great performance. And Arthur Miller himself adapted his play for this television adaptation. So just fantastic. All right, so there's my report on the weekend. I guess I had a pretty good weekend. I found some quality entertainment that I'm happy to recommend. Is there still time to share a little news? It's my typical Monday. I avoid the news because it's Martin Luther King Day. Let me do this. I want to read to you something very familiar. An excerpt from Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail. He wrote this from Birmingham jail after one of his many arrests. April 16th, 1963. First, I must confess that over the last few years I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically feels he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of time and who constantly advises the Negro to wait until a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. So there it is, an excerpt from Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail. And is there anything more timely, more relevant? Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema just dug in on voting rights. And they say almost verbatim what Martin Luther King writes. I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods of direct action. Or in this case, I can't agree with creating a carve-out for the filibuster, something that's been done 160 times in the history of the Senate, something that was just done about a month ago because the Republicans refused to participate in raising the debt ceiling. Manchin and Sinema are the absolute essence of moderate white folks that Martin Luther King identified so clearly. And we're still having to deal with them. They're not the only ones, but they are on the poster. So it's a damn shame. Unless something very dramatic happens between the time I'm recording these words and the time you hear them, voting rights is going to just die. Which, if you'll recall, we weren't even talking about this a week ago. We only had about a week, less than a week, of real focus on voting rights. Before that, it was all about Build Back Better. It was all about the social safety net. It was all about that legislation that was going to drag America into the 21st century along with most other countries, where we're going to have childcare and family leave, universal pre-K, free community college, expanded medical benefits, lowered drug costs, and the most ambitious climate crisis mitigation in the history of this country. Now, it still wasn't very good. It still wasn't enough, but that doesn't change the fact that it was the most ambitious effort in the history of this nation to fight climate crisis. All of it gone. All of it gone because of Joe Manchin. That's where all the attention was for a year. As soon as Joe Biden got COVID relief done, he got infrastructure done. Okay, I'll give him credit for that. But that was it. That was the end of the line. Then we spend the entire rest of the year on Build Back Better, and Joe Manchin, they can't budge him. So, okay, well, this is what Democrats do. Democrats, man, they drive me nuts. Oh, look, Martin Luther King Day is coming up on the calendar. Let's make that our deadline for this vote on voting rights. Literally 1 week out. Okay, now all of our attention is here. And he makes the big speech in Atlanta. Nope, Sinema, Manchin, not having it. The white moderates that King identified so well. And there they are. Now, could Joe Biden have LBJ'd these two? You know, there's this great myth, I don't know if it's true or not, I mean, historians seem to tell us it is, that LBJ had the ability to just knock heads. He got what he wanted. He knew how to whip a vote. He got right in your face, very literally. He got nose to nose with you and said, damn it, you're going to vote for my bill. And that's how he passed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. I feel it's necessary to remind us all the time that, yeah, we need people in the streets. Of course, nothing gets done without that pressure. We need the Martin Luther Kings of the world. We need the leaders. We need those, the people who are going to push, who have street cred, who can lead a march, and then also march very literally into the Oval Office. Somebody with that kind of access. I don't know if we really have that now. I don't know who fills that bill. Stacey Abrams comes to mind. She's actually in the halls of power. She can talk with people, and she can get out on the street with people. Both sides of this equation are absolutely essential. And what have we got? We got people in the streets. I don't know if we have a liaison between the streets and the White House, but we got Joe Biden, who's just failing. My thinking about Joe Biden hasn't really changed much since the early primaries. I always thought he was basically a good person who wanted to do the right thing, but he had completely the wrong idea about this whole bipartisanship fantasy. When the Republicans have just, it's been their stated goal really since the impeachment of Bill Clinton. It's been pretty clear that we can't govern with these people. They said it right out loud as soon as Obama was elected, when they got together with their caucus and said, okay, get in line. We will oppose virtually all Obama initiatives. And it took Barack Obama, oh my God, the whole healthcare, that torturous year of getting the Affordable Care Act passed, where he's just bending over backwards and trying to negotiate with Republicans. And all of us on the left are just yelling, what are you doing? He allowed them to water the thing down until it was barely recognizable, and then got exactly 0 votes from them. And those of us on the left are going, well, what did you think? What did you expect? I swear it took him 6 years. It took him his entire first term and half of his second term to finally decide, okay, well, I guess it's just us. And that's when he really kicked in with the executive orders, and he just gave up. Well, I've given up on Republicans many years ago. And Joe Biden, there again, my opinion of him really hasn't changed. He's a nice guy who wants to do good. He's just failing. So he couldn't LBJ, Cinema and Mansion. In the last week's 2 fiery speeches, one about January 6th and the other about voting rights, he finally took off the gloves and starts punching at Republicans. And it looks like, oh, okay, looks like maybe Joe has discovered in 1 year what took Barack Obama 6. The Republicans aren't going to come with you. You can't work with them. So now where does that leave us? In the very near future here, tomorrow or the next day, you and I are going to have to talk about where we go from here. I got to think about this a little bit. Plus, today I'm out of time. Luckily, I wasted enough time at the top of the show because I knew I wasn't quite ready to talk about this. Where do we go next? And we are out of time. So let me say, until then, I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.